All right, so we just talked about the winners of the NFL Combine, but now it's time to get into some guys who might have tanked their draft stock a little bit. Let's start with someone you might know pretty well, Pat. It is Malachi Field, wide receiver out of Notre Dame. What did you see from his Combine?
Yeah, I just felt like him being projected maybe as a fringe first round guy probably died at the combine. And it's mainly because of how we look at 40s. I think for some players like Carnell Tate, you're looking at a 4.5 ish 40 and you're thinking, okay, that's how he plays. That's what we see on tape. We knew he wasn't going to be a burner. That's not even his game. But at the very least, that is actually what we see from him in pads. When it came to Malachi Fields, I felt like that vertical threat is sold with him and him being able to create some separation. And he ran a 4.61 official. And I
Mm,
think that there was maybe some expectation or at least a hope that he could be somewhere in the 4.4s. And that just wasn't the case. And then I
mm.
think you have a little bit of confirmation bias whenever you look at the tape. And I think he's a guy who probably is going to fall based off of where he was projected prior to the combine. I think he didn't really do himself any favors.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people were saying, maybe first round guy before the Combine,
Yeah, I
but
wasn't buying it either.
yeah, I don't think I've really seen enough, and then, there's just faster guys there, it's just yeah, I think he's played himself out of there. But let's move on now to a pretty big name in draft circles. It is Ruben Bain Jr. out of Miami, who didn't actually do like anything at the combine. The story here is his arms, or the lack thereof. Pat, what do you think about all this madness?
30 and 7/8 inches is very short. He was in the bottom three for the linemen over this past weekend. I think, yes, there is a concern. He plays a different game than the rest of the edge rushers that are, measuring in with longer arms. He's going to have to adjust for that at the NFL level. But I would say, too, that even with all the second guesses, I don't think it'll actually impact his draft stock. I think he's still going to go in the top half of the first round. And I will still say that Miami sent four offensive linemen to the combine this year.
Mhm.
One is Francis Mauigoa, and he is going to be a top 10 pick probably. And they were having daily practice battles. And I think that you take that into consideration that there haven't been any reports that he struggles in practice and feasts on lesser ACC opponents. And then also too, you have that in the back of your mind, and you have the playoff run, which he faced plenty of NFL guys on that playoff run, plenty of great offensive line, specifically the Texas A&M offensive line, and he was great, super versatile. So I
Mhm.
think when you look at the tape, you think, okay, he had plenty of NFL competition day in and day out. They had the playoff run. I don't think it'll matter. He's going to have to adjust for it, obviously, and he probably already has
Yeah.
at the college level. So it won't be a foreign thing for him. It's something I think a lot of people might like have at the forefront. It's confirmation bias for the people who don't think he can play at the NFL level at the same way that he did in college. But there's just so much tape out on him that
Mm.
it's pretty clear that I don't think it will matter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people put stock into these measurements at the combine and, who's bigger, who's smaller, whatever, which is something I'm sure, we're going to talk about later. I put him as a faller just because, for the people in his skill group, David Bailey, Arvell Reese to go out and dominate. And then, this arm story is taking over the narrative around him, however unfair that may be. We might see maybe, because I mean, I've seen what highest two. Now I'm not really sure. I still think he's a top 10 talent for sure. Let's get into another edge rusher in Cassius Howell. He might have smaller arms than Ruben Baines. What do you think?
reportedly, that is true. 30 and 1/4 inch arms. He ran a 4.59 40, which the actual time itself isn't that great. So those two things might hurt him. But I think I'm going to go in the same direction as Ruben Bain. Because if I defend Ruben Bain, I think it
Yeah,
has to be
yeah.
fair that I do mention that Cassius Howell had the fastest 10-yard split among all edge rushers at 1.58. And I think that that's huge. And there are plenty of people who take that 10-yard split way
Yeah.
like more into stock than the 40. So I do have to mention that he didn't like absolutely flatline during the test this weekend. It just so happened that I think some of the bigger issues are kind of or some of the issues are seen at the forefront rather than maybe some of the bigger storylines, which is the 10-yard split. It's concerning. I think both him and Bain can be coupled into the same group where it's like it's just going to depend on the specific scheme and who's drafting and who weighs what. But yeah, no, he probably didn't do himself very many favors.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think it was the combine, a lot of people expected. But again, it's that arm thing. I'm getting tired of hearing about it. However, I mean, what the argument is Will Campbell,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't know.
It's
There's
just going to
so
be
many
something people anytime you play bad, anytime you struggle, anytime you see every player in every game gets overwhelmed on a rep.
yeah,
Like there's going to be one every single game. Anytime you see that, people are going to clip it T-Rex arms.
yeah,
It just is what it is. If it's something that defines a player, it defines a player. But teams will make their own individual choice and we'll see if it actually affects him. But yeah, he didn't
yeah.
have the actual total combine I think some people expected.
Yeah, for sure. But let's move on to the offense. In Emmett Johnson from Nebraska, running back. A lot of people view this guy as a running back number 2 behind Love, but he went out and ran a pretty not great 40, lowest in his running back class. What did you think from his performance?
Yeah, 4.56 isn't going to be what you want from the 40, especially because we just had talked about when we were talking about the winners that it seems like everybody's getting faster. We felt like even some of the winners or the risers were being overshadowed because they actually weren't the number one
Yeah,
like tester in any sort of specific area. They just had an overall great combine, but it shows just how crazy some of these guys are, and they can just have a 45-inch vertical or a 4.26 40, something like that. It doesn't help. I think that Jeremiah Love, as you mentioned right in front of him, absolutely solidified himself as the number
yeah,
one back. 4.36. I mean, that when you compare it to a guy at a 4.56, that's rough. And yeah, like lowest among the running backs. And the next guy's at a 4.52. Like it's not even 4.53, 4.52. Like that just really sucks. That's not good. I would imagine that probably, unless that is more of an indication of what his 40 is, he should run it at his pro day
yeah,
just to try to like get some people saying, okay, he's a 4.59. If you could get to a 4.59, I say you definitely want to run it. If you can get it lower than a 4.56 official as your highest from the combine, you try to do that just to have anybody like calm down a little bit about it. For running backs, it is probably more important than it would be for wide receivers, obviously. Um, but yeah, 4.56, not great. I keep saying 4.56, but
yeah.
yeah.
It's not. I think a lot of these guys can, redeem themselves in the pro day, but they just have to. But let's move into our last one. It's an offensive lineman in Sam Hecht. And the issue with Sam Hecht is not, I mean, you look at his stats and obviously what he ran his 40 slow. Yeah, he's an offensive lineman. He's huge. A lot of the drills and stuff, he looked just really like lethargic, slipping around on the field. He didn't have, I didn't see great footwork. Uh, and a lot of the stats and the testing just don't really pop out as much as other guys. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. He didn't have the arm issue that we were talking about earlier, but it wasn't like he had the longest arms known to man with 31 and 5/8. I mean, 6'4", 303. Yeah, like what are you going to expect? He's not going to run a 40 that's insane. He ran 5.1. I mean, but nobody really cares. I think it's the 20-yard shuttle, the three-cone drill, the broad jump, vertical, stuff like that, where you're maybe looking at trying to see if you could see something more explosive from him and didn't really see that. It happens. Some
Yeah,
offensive linemen just don't test well, though, and
yeah,
we've seen that in recent years where the offensive line group is probably the group that takes the least amount of stock in a combine like this. But when you really just are underwhelming across the board, it is a little bit tough for I know some GMs to look past, but I think he'll be okay. If on tape, if he's showing you something from his time at Kansas State, he should be okay. But yeah, the
yeah.
combine certainly didn't help him.
Yeah, I mean, I put him out as a faller just because, this was not really a guy I felt like was going to be towards the top of the draft. So it was really imperative he has like this great combine, and he just didn't.
And
Uh,
also too, if he shows like the not like the I don't know exactly what I should call it, but the ability to be a center in the National Football League from the neck up, and
yeah,
he can do it and that sort of and test well in that realm whenever he's talking to these teams. We're not even going to notice any sort of slippage. But if that is even a question that some people have, we could see some centers, or himself like fall in that regard.
yeah. Well, it's time to get into our honorable mention of the losers category, and we have here Aaron Glenn from the New York Jets for sleeping on the job. I think he was sleeping during when the edge rushers were testing, which is a position they desperately need. This is an awful, awful look. What do you say?
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't one of those guys who was immediately going to defend. Oh man, they're having their longest days, 18-hour days, watching film constantly, and then you're just gonna see the footage from the combine later. I mean, I just thought it was a terrible look. There was nobody else falling asleep,
Yeah,
so that's always the thing too that you have to recognize. So even if you're trying to make any sort of excuses, nobody else was caught sleeping. So not a good look, and also too, it's just an easy way to crap on the Jets because
yeah, which is like the best thing in the world.